Between the two of them. The inside of Coates. Parker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Just a good old boy, never meaning no harm. Beats all you never saw, been in trouble with the law since the day they was born. Straightening the curves, flattening the hills. Someday the mountain might get them, but the law never will. Making their way the only way they know how. That's just a little bit more than the law will allow. Just a good old boy, they wouldn't change if they could. Fighting the system like a true modern day Robin Hood.
We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around.
Good evening, everyone. We're at the halfway point of the AGON by AOC MX5 Cup here on the VRRC, the second half of the season. What does it have in store for us? Well, we're about to find out, in part anyway, as we move into the next pair of races in what has been a hugely exciting season. And we are doing something very, very different. We race tonight at the Bridgehampton race circuit, continuing our US tour, but tonight doing something that you can only do in sim racing and revisiting a circuit that closed some 20 odd years ago and really enjoyed most of its heyday through the 1960s and 70s, and through the magic of sim racing we get to enjoy some high-tech, very modern racing with these hybrid Mazda MX-5s around what looks like a very exciting and punishing circuit. Andy McEwan here in the commentary box, Jack Oliphant as ever alongside me, and I know I say this to you every week, Jack. I'm really looking forward to the racing tonight, etc., etc. But I really, really am looking forward to the racing tonight because I don't have a clue what to expect.
No, it's been described to us, hasn't it? Think of Thruxton with the punishing nature of Zandvoort and the sort of undulations of a Brands Hatch, potentially. It's got a right mix of circuits based on this Bridgehampton. I'm very much looking forward to it, just like you are, Andy. I think it's going to be a test for the drivers. The tyres are certainly going to be a bit of a test for the drivers. Apparently, there's a lot of four-wheel drifting going on, which, of course, you don't want to do too much at the beginning of a race because it will ruin your opportunity at keeping hold of the tyres towards the end of it. There's been a lot of laps turned in practice as well. So I think clearly some drivers are feeling the need to get to grips with it. It's not a common circuit, but I think it was Joel Lask who did nearly 270 plus laps in practice over the course of the last couple of days. So, yeah, a lot of drivers feeling the heat.
Indeed so. Not at all surprised to see that many of them are feeling the need for some extra practice here this week, because this is a circuit most of them, I would guess, had never even heard of before the start of this season, let alone had much practice around. As you can see, it kicks off the second half of this USA tour for the AGON by AOC Mazda MX-5 Cup. We've already visited such classics as Laguna Seca, Road America, Circuit of the Americas in Texas, and last week, Road Atlanta for our second 40-minute double distance race. Tonight, we're back to the sprint race format, so two 20-minute races, double the opportunity to try and grab yourself a race win or a podium. For next week, we go back into pit stop mode with the 40-minute race at Sebring. The Virginia International Raceway on the 19th of October hosts the penultimate round of the championship, which will be our final sprint race section of the season, before it all comes to a close at Watkins Glen. Another pit stop race, double points on offer for those pit stop races as well, remember, and it is highly likely that when we get to the end of the season, Jack, it's going to be a very, very hard and close championship battle that we're enjoying.
I'm certainly hoping so. If the championship, as it stands, is anything to go by, you're absolutely correct. And fingers crossed it will remain that close, that's for sure. I believe we can go into what happened last week at Road Atlanta for the 40-minute race. In fact, there we can. Joel Lask took the race victory. Carl Felvis in second place. Josh Martin in third. And the reason why that is probably the most surprising podium, not in terms of those three drivers didn't deserve to be there, is more the fact that Eric Axelsen wasn't there on the podium. And that has really blown the championship wide open. Eric Axelsen did have a little bit of a poor start, I believe, to the race last week. He was very much dicing with a couple of drivers and then ended up going off the road. And the rest of it was a recovery drive. A very impressive one, but I think he only managed fourth place. So Joel Lask, he took home double points in the 40 minutes, remember, because there's only one race. We doubled them up. He took home the most amount of them. Carl Felvis and Josh Martin in third.
Indeed so, and there was a bit of a jumble up of the points after that round as well, because there were a few judicials, many of them actually affecting front-running drivers. Nicky Taylor, for example, was one driver who was given a penalty for a first corner collision, and it means that once the lowest score is dropped by each of the drivers, this is how the championship standings look, with just a solitary point separating Eric Axelsen, who, as Jack said, had a disastrous fourth place a week ago, his first time off the podium. He's 1 point. Exactly. I'm sure he was kicking himself all week for that. 1 point is his advantage over Joel Lask. So as much as we take the mickey out of him for finishing off the podium by only one position, it did have an effect in the points. It tightened things up nicely, because not that much further back is Kyle Felvis in third, only 5 points off the championship lead. Those three, they're now starting to make a bit of a break for it. Josh Martin's had some decent pace, it must be said, all season long, but only the win and 2 podiums across the 6 races that we've had so far, means that he sits 4th in the points, with Nicky Taylor and Elliot Dalton-Ayres tied for 5th place. Jens Verhoeven, Andy Carroll, Ethan Hill and Reece Bell rounding out the top 10 in the championship standings as we arrive here at Bridgehampton. So all very much still to play for. The drop score situation could continue to change as we go deeper and deeper into the season, and we are expecting a slightly topsy-turvy night of racing here tonight around this Bridgehampton circuit, which, as we said, we certainly weren't very familiar with. I suspect many of the drivers weren't particularly familiar with it, and perhaps many of the viewers at home not that familiar with it either. So we'll give you an opportunity here before we dive into qualifying to take a closer look at the venue for tonight's 2 races.
Hello everyone, welcome to the 5th round of the AGON by AOC MX5 Turbo Cup. We're here at Bridgehampton to start the first track guide of the second half of the season. Heading now into the double right-hander of Hangston Turn. First part is flat out, the second part is just about flat out if you get the line right and you're not carrying too much weight. Into Milestone Corner, brake early, use all of the tarmac on the inside and the outside as we now head down the Milestone straight towards Colasanti Corner. Go down to 4th gear, get it in quite early, use up all of the road available. We're actually getting the power a tiny bit too early there. As you can see, we had to take a small, again similar story, getting the car early to the apex, using all of the road on the exit. As we now head down to the next section of the track, the double left-hander, it's deceiving. The first left looks quite similar to the second left, but the first left is very much flat out. You do need to brake for this one, get it early into the apex, use up the road available, but make sure you can get back over to the left-hand side to open up the hairpin. This is a very tricky corner. It's really easy to get some oversteer. You're looking for that orange cone on the right-hand side to get the car hooked into the apex. Use up all the road on the exit as we now head down the east straight and into the double left right-hander. That is the final corners. We're going to take an early apex again, using up all the road and really hard and early on the power as we go now down the main straight, and that completes a lap of Bridgehampton.
Well, a fantastic look there. Driver's eye view of the 2.8 mile course here at the Bridgehampton race circuit. Opened back in 1957 and, as I said, continued to host racing until well into the 70s, eventually closing just before of the new millennium, and it really is a voyage back in time here, and it's a slightly odd sight, isn't it, to see these state-of-the-art Mark IV Mazda MX5s with their hybrid systems, of course, included, although not available during qualifying, as always, racing around such an old-school track, Jack.
Yeah, it's quite an odd set. Well, to be fair, because we didn't watch it back in the day when it was first open, because none of us in the broadcast room anyway were alive, it's almost like we're seeing a new track that's never been seen before, but it's very, very old school. You're absolutely right. And the thing that interested me about that hot lap that we just saw from Lewis there was the throttle tracing that you can see on the left hand side of the fast laps. You might be able to catch it on YouTube somewhere. Is normally you want to just get back to power once. That, as soon as you come off the braking, you sort of coast a little bit and then you're full to power only once. But Lewis was having to do it 3 or 4 times just to get the rear rotated, but keep it in check at the same time and grip the front end as well. He's really steering it with the throttle cable. So I think a lot of these drivers are probably, that's why we're having so many practice laps, was just to try and get that timing and that feel for the car on the circuit that is as slippery and as punishing as this one.
And it's why I think we're still seeing drivers improving. Eric Axelsen has just set the fastest, or a while ago actually, set the fastest lap time of the session, 1:34.0. That's quicker than anything anyone did in practice. So all of those laps of practice, and they're still finding time. So Eric Axelsen, 4 attempts to the good, despite the fact that he's carrying the most ballast, both the driver handicap system applying ballast, and then also the success ballast system that applies based upon your race results and championship standings within this particular series. Axelsen is the heaviest car out there, but he's still the fastest. Kyle Felbus, though, only just under a tenth of a second clear of Joel Lask, who's coming across the line now to finish a lap, but is not quite able to improve. 34.5 is very close, though, to the pace that he was running earlier on. Elliot Dalton-Ayres is fourth, Nicky Taylor fifth, and here Ethan Hill in sixth position ahead of Josh Martin, who's a little bit further down the order than you might have anticipated. Josh Martin only seventh at the moment on the grid. He has managed to qualify at least inside the top 3 rows of the grid for every round of the season so far. So Josh Martin, you would sense here, Jack, with a little bit of time in his pocket maybe.
Yeah, well, to be fair, 7th isn't a bad position, but it's more the time that he's off the pole position time, isn't it? 1.2 seconds is quite a big margin, and you're absolutely right. We're used to seeing Josh a little bit closer than that. Carl Felvis has just gone purple in Sector 2. His Sector 1, maybe not as quick as he was hoping, but he's looking a little bit stronger towards the midsection of the lap. And because we're so unfamiliar with this track, we're not entirely sure which area of the track is probably the most useful to be quicker on. But he has crossed the line. He didn't improve, or it wasn't an improvement enough anyway. I don't think it was an improvement at all. But he shows that he has got it in the locker. Maybe he just needs to hook it all together and he'll get that ideal lap time out of the car to get it on pole.
Yeah, indeed so. It's a voyage into the unknown, as I said. We're all trying to learn this track and which corner is which. Also, where the hybrid is going to be used in the race. There is that long main straight, but will there be a few drivers looking to hit that hybrid button in some slightly interesting areas? We shall find out in due course, because we're only 10 minutes away from this qualifying session, during which the hybrid is not available. But once we get into the races later on, will have those 15 hybrid activations throughout the course of the race. Checkered flag is out there. Eric Axel sees the checkered flag. Interestingly there, did all of that session, by the looks of it, did Eric, on the medium tyres. So not only is he the best part of 4 tenths clear of Joel Lask, who did improve there to second place in the closing stages of the session, but he's done it on the medium tyre. Josh Martin also on the mediums, so interesting there that Josh Martin not able to extract the same sort of performance out of those medium tyres as the championship leader did. But Joel Lask here getting himself into second place on the grid, and that means, Jack, that it would appear we're going to have our top 2 in the championship, who are covered, in fact our top 3 in the championship, who are covered by just 5 points, all starting together at the front of the grid, which is a recipe for a very entertaining first race, I reckon.
It certainly is, but it might not be in that order, because Carl Felvis has just put himself into second place with a purple Sector 2 and a green Sector 3. Joel Lask, though, he's on a green Sector 1. This could be an absolute flyer if he hooks it up with a little bit of slipstream by, I believe that's Josh Martin just ahead of him. And apparently in the YouTube chat, Dave has come on, who quite often comments about Josh. He said that it's his fault if Josh is a little bit slow and stuck down in 7th place. Been showing him his new car when Josh should have been practicing. Well, Dave, that's just irresponsible. You need to be a better friend and get him on the simulator. But I hope you enjoy your new car.
Depends what the car is. We may forgive it if it's a nice car. If it's something we don't necessarily rate that highly, then yes, that was a colossal waste of Josh's time, wasn't it?
Yes, I can't imagine a Ford Focus from 2004 is really worth looking at, to be honest. But yeah, we'll have a look, because Josh Martin's crossed the checkered flag. Nicky Taylor has as well. He's up to 4th place. Interesting note about Nicky Taylor. He said he was announcing his retirement from VRRC. Well, we've just been informed that he's actually going to be joining the touring car action after the MX5, and we'll speak about that maybe towards the end of the show a little bit more.
Indeed so, because qualifying has been completed then. We have got Eric Axelsen back in his rightful place on pole position, and we'll speak to him on the other side of this quick break. Qualifying done here at Bridgehampton for the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Cup, which moves into the second half of its season now. And we have a familiar face starting from pole position because Eric Axelsen is back in his rightful place. Eric, it's been a few weeks now since we saw you on pole position. Second place on the grid at COTA, third last week at Road Atlanta, but you're back at the front. And I think this is an important place to be starting at the front, isn't it? You don't really want to be getting stuck in the midfield here.
I think you're right, Andy. It's I think it will be a very interesting first lap. I'm very happy to start in pole of this track. So yeah, it feels good to be back on pole.
What do you make of the track? Because it is quite unlike anything else we race at, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so fast. There's like, except the main straight, there's no place where you can like relax, if to say, you have to concentrate like all the time, every corner, and if you go just off the track by just the slightest, it will slow you down so much in the sand. So yeah, this is going to be tough.
It certainly looks like a demanding circuit, a pretty unforgiving one as well, if it does all go wrong. How do you think it will race? Do you think there are many places you can pass? Is it mainly going to be a case of using the hybrid down the pit straight? What are you expecting from this one?
Well, I don't really know, to be honest, because the MX5 provides such a good racing, I think, and I think with the drivers here, I think we could do some side-by-side racing all over the track, but yeah, it will be it will be hard, but it's gonna be good.
We're certainly hoping for lots of side-by-side racing. I guess you would be quite happy with a pretty uneventful night, though, really, because that championship battle, it's tightened up a lot. You've doubled your points lead by taking pole position. You're now 2 points ahead of Joel, but it's looking like being one of the most competitive championships we've had for a while. Are you enjoying being a part of it?
It's great, and yeah, Joel skyrocketed the last week, I think, and yeah, it's so close, and it's many rounds to go. A lot can happen, It's going to be interesting for sure.
No, absolutely. We're really, really looking forward to this one. Eric, we'll let you go and finish your preparations for the race. Congratulations on that third pole of the season, and best of luck for race one.
Thank you, Andy.
Eric Axelsen on the pole position here at Bridgehampton with a very rapid lap time. What was it? A 1:34.0 in the end, which is, Jack, I'm sure you'll be delighted to know, 7.5 seconds off the outright lap record in the real world set around this place. You're talking about an old school track when the lap record was set in 1969 by Denny Hume, a completely different generation, and really interested to see what it has in store for us here tonight.
I was going to say, I mean, those sort of, when you hear a lap record being set all the back then, you sort of, normally it'd be very, very impressive. But then you hear that the track's been closed for all that time. It's, oh, right, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, it's, I think Eric sounded as excited as Eric can be. It quite often comes into the commentary box and he plays it cool and calm and collected. And that's exactly the same as how he played it this time round. But I sort of got the sense that he was a little bit nervous. He had a little bit of anticipation. As we said many a time, voyage into the unknown, but that's what keeps it fresh and exciting. And to be honest, I like sim championships that do take advantage of the fact that we can go to tracks that you can no longer go to in real life, or even do variations that you can no longer do, i.e. the Silverstone, the old setup at Silverstone. I actually personally prefer the new one, but it's still fun that championships can be hosted at those sort of long forgotten circuits.
I think we've just uncovered a very controversial opinion there, Jack. You are the first person I've heard say that. We'll dissect that later on after the broadcast, maybe, and I'll tell you why you're wrong. Yes, this is going to be an interesting race for sure. And, the pressure, I'm not sure the pressure gets to Eric Axelsen. I don't think he's the kind of guy who feels the pressure, really. But, we've seen this countless times in lots of different championships. When it is this close and you start getting... there's something psychologically that happens to a driver, I think. You get past the halfway point of the championship, you look at where you are in the standings and you think, right, it's on this season. I could be champion. And Eric Axelsson, Joel Lask and Kyle Felvers will very much now, I think, go into championship mode and try to make sure that they're bagging as many points as they possibly can each and every race. And those three do start from the top 3 positions on the grid. Axelsson, the green and black car on the left. Kyle Felvers, third in the championship, now 6 points adrift of Axelsson after that qualifying session, but starting right alongside him on that front row. And then Joel Lask, the black car, on 3rd place on the grid, 2nd in the championship. And then keep an eye on Nicky Taylor, teammate of Kyle Felvers. He's been sort of supporting Kyle all season long, trying to help Kyle in his championship bid. And I'm sure he'll look to do the same again, qualifying near the pointy end for this first of 2 20-minute races then here at Bridgehampton. The second half of the season gets underway now. Away they go, and it's another demon getaway from Eric Axelsson. He has got the knack of getting these cars off the line down to a T, and he will lead them down the long stretch into turn number 1. This tricky right-hander at the end of the straight, hands can turn, very quick right-hander it is. It's side by side behind him, but Axelsson definitely with the lead. That's Lask and Felvers going wheel to wheel, but Kyle Felvers gets the better of Joel Lask, hangs on to second place. There's contact, that's Josh Martin out wide, contact perhaps with Ethan Hill. John Jones is often pointing the wrong way too, and Josh Martin's woes have really hit early because he fell right to the back of the field. I didn't expect that. I thought he might lose a couple of places, but Josh Martin's night going from mediocre to pretty bad now.
Yeah, and it's all Dave's fault because he was too busy showing him a Citroen C2 Sebastian Loeb edition, apparently.
That does get my approval, in fairness. Though.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a pretty cool car, I'll give you that one. But it has meant that Josh Martin has unfortunately become stricken here in race 1 of the evening at the Bridgehampton circuit. But Eric Axelsson, he's absolutely flying, isn't he? Oh, is that a little bit of a wide moment for Joel Lask? Nicky Taylor, no, just absolutely sent it into a hell of a lot of trees and sand, I believe. We can't even see the driver coming out of the other end. So there he is, and he sneaks back onto the circuit. And he's unfortunately all the way down into 12th place.
Had to hack his way out of the foliage, I think, there to get back on the road. He was so far off the track. Look at this fight for second place that's developing there. Axelsson starting to break clear, but then you've got Felvers, Lask, and Ethan Hill, look, the blue car, charging around the outside, almost loses it into the braking zone. That was really close into the final corner, but he did manage to sweep past Elliot Dalton-Ayres into that 4th place. So Axelsson leads the opening lap by just over a second. Real mix of tyres at the front here. Look, Axelsson on the mediums, Felvers on the softs, then Lask and Dalton-Ayres on the mediums, with Ethan Hill, who didn't get the better of Dalton-Ayres in the end, also on the softs. That's going to be really interesting to watch over the next 18 minutes, Jack, to see who's got it right.
Yeah, well, Rich Hayden came in to have a little bit of a chat with us, a bit of a brief about Bridgehampton. Oh, that's a wide moment by Dalton-Ayres, isn't it? And the apex was taken by Ethan Hill. Again, though, they're not done and dusted. They're not finished there. It's actually a little bit disorientating knowing where they are on the circuit, what corner's coming up next. But it looks like going to be a tight right-hander with Ethan Hill carrying a lot of momentum around the outside. It's going to be a difficult move to keep hold of that for Hill, but he certainly seems to be up to the task because he has got his car all the way in front as they dive into the left hand up the hill. But yeah, I'm very interested. Rich Hayden did come in and say that he thinks the mediums will be the optimum tyre. The softs might go off a little bit too much because there's a bit too much drifting involved in getting around this circuit.
Yeah, I agree with him. I would have expected the softs to have maybe more of a performance advantage in the early stages, though, precisely because of that, because you need all the lateral grip you can get round here, and the softs will give you that. Here comes Dalton-Ayres refusing to leave Ethan Hill alone, and Ethan Hill on those soft tyres doesn't have much grip there, does he? Runs out wide through the hairpin, and so back into 4th place again goes Elliot Dalton-Ayres. The leader's changed, though. Kyle Felvers has gone through into the lead. That must have been a mistake from Axelsson, because Felvers was about 9/10 back when I looked half a lap ago, and now he is half a second in front. So Kyle Felvers has got the advantage, and he leads them across the line here for the second time. That is a turn up for the books, Jack.
It is indeed, yeah. We have absolutely no idea how it happened, but the fact that it has happened is what we're going to have to deal with, isn't it? Because Eric Axelsson, although on pole position, are we going to sort of see the old Eric come back where he does the pole position but doesn't quite have the mustard to actually take the race of victory? Well, he's going to have to do it the hard way now, isn't he? He hasn't dropped back behind Joel Lask, which will be an advantage for him. But we know how keen Kyle Felvers is to keep his positions out on circuit. And around this track, no one's really sure how aggressive he can be in the defence, how aggressive he can be on the attack, where the moves are going to happen, because this is the first couple of laps that we've actually seen. And Ethan Hill and Elliot Dalton-Ayres are trying their best to sort of be the guinea pigs here. They're throwing moves left, right, centre, outside, inside, up the hill, down the hill. Any way they can fit an MX5, they're trying.
Turns out Eric Axelsson was right. You can go side by side pretty much everywhere around here. Little bit of paint traded there, but here comes Ethan Hill back at him down the hill, and he's going to try and get to the inside line. They turn left, but then they turn right through the hairpin, and Hill has gone through already, so it didn't matter. He had the inside line for the left-hander, and he's managed to get himself back into 4th place, but for how long, we shall wait and see. Not very long at all if Elliot Dalton-Ayres has his way, because he up the inside into the hairpin, wasn't quite able to make that move stick. Eric Axelsson, this was his 3rd pole position of the season. In the previous 2, he had a 50-50 hit rate for converting it into a win. He won round 1 at Laguna Seca from pole, qualified again on pole position at Road America a week later, and didn't manage to win, where he finished in 2nd place in that race. So, yeah, jury's out as to whether he's going to be able to convert this one into victory, but he will have to find a way past Kyle Felvers to do it, and he's dropping back. Felvers with a good run out to the final corner, just ekes the gap out ever so slightly.
Yeah, and the hybrids is going to be very interesting to see how they're conserved as well, because Joel Lask, has got a couple more in the banker, hasn't he, to use on the 2 in front of him, so that might come really helpful, come in real helpful later on in the session and later on in the race with 15 minutes to go. Of course, these are 20-minute races now. Kyle Felvers and Eric Axelsson just seem to be trading their hybrid usages even, with Eric closing up a little bit now. Is that the slipstream taking effect, or is he just starting to get to grips with the circuit? Maybe the medium tyres are starting to come into play, but I feel like that would be a little early in the race for that.
Yeah, maybe, although we did expect the tyre situation to be interesting here tonight, but Eric Axelsson at the moment on those medium tyres, really able to find any sort of an edge over Felvers. He's got the slipstream, as you say, they're using the hybrids pretty evenly right now, and it looks as though Axelsson is really going to have to work hard to get the victory. Now, the good news for him is that he is at least ahead of Joel Lask. Lask is the one who is closer to him in the points, but there are only 6 points between Felvers and Axelsson for a race win in this championship. Let me remind myself, you get 25 points. For a second, it's 22. So as it stands, Axelsson would retain his championship lead, but it would halve. It would come down from 6 points to 3 points over Kyle Felvers, who would move himself ahead of Joel Lask. But I suspect that it will not quite be as straightforward as that, because Axelsson has closed in by a 10th or so on this lap. Kyle Felvers may feel the need to defend heading down into turn 1 this time.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at previous results very quickly before this sparks off again, because I'm sure it will. I was going to have a look at the drop scores, because it's very complicated with drop scores. I won't go too far into it, but Eric Axelsson's drop score is better than Joel Lask, so he's got that sort of in the bank as well in terms of championship. But Kyle Felvers has been probably the most consistent driver out of everyone so far in this championship. He's got 47 points at Laguna Seca. Oh, actually, I'll ignore that for a second, because looking back, Eric Axelsson looks for the race-winning move. Oh, well, the race-leading move, I should just say, with Kyle Felvers having to go a little bit defensive. How much will that put him offline? Has that given Eric the impetus to go at the inside of the next couple of corners? It hasn't quite yet. Interesting to see that he is able to defend there into turn 2.
Yes, he was able to defend by the skin of his teeth, but the fact he's having to defend now is something that he's not really had to do up until this point. Once he got the lead, Kyle Felvers, he pulled out that 5 or 6 tenths of a second advantage and then sort of held it, but suddenly it came back down again. Whether he made a mistake, I'm not so sure, but Eric Axelsson certainly now sensing an opportunity. Takes a very different line into the hairpin there, Axelsson. Turns in a lot earlier, but there you can see Felvers gets off the corner better because of his wider line and comes out onto the straight a little bit faster than Eric Axelsson. They drop down the hill then up towards the final corner, and this is definitely a turn at which Kyle Felvers seems to have an advantage. He comes off this last corner very, very well. See, Axelsson charges in, the gap comes down slightly, but on the exit, it's back up over 6 tenths of a second again, and interestingly, Felvers jumps on the hybrid, Axelsson does not. They're both getting away from Lask in third, and with Dalton-Ayres a similar distance behind him in fourth. In fact, they're all pretty well spread out at the moment, aside from the top 2.
Yeah, just going back to your sort of observation on that hairpin, I'm sure we'll see it again because we'll probably be focusing on these guys for another lap or so. It does look like Eric Axelsson, he's almost V'ing the corner a lot more, isn't he? It's similar, I would say, to Lovefield and Silverstone, where you end up going for that early apex just because of how you come out of Brooklands. But you go for that sort of early apex, and then you sort of got to really slow the car down to rotate it, and then you go for a late apex to try and get the power down and the car straight as you can. Whereas Kyle Felvers went for the line that Lewis Edwards actually, who's our broadcaster, of course, it's a brilliant job, he actually did on the hot lap, on the track map that we did earlier on, where he goes really wide, carries a little bit more momentum, and then, in the mid-corner, and then straightens off the exit, and that is allowing Kyle Felvers to just get that little bit of extra drive off the corner and then start the lap a little bit further ahead.
dangerously close to some expert analysis there from
I know.
Oliphant. I will be having words after the race. No, you're absolutely right. You can see him do it again there. Tight entry, sort of drifts out wide through the centre, but Felvers gets off that corner really well. Less well that time, though. Eric Axelsen staying a tenth or so closer than he was a lap ago. Is that perhaps these soft tyres starting to go away on Felvers' car? Remember, Axelsen on the medium tyres, which should be more durable. We're not quite halfway through the race yet, so if Felvers is starting to run into tyre difficulties, this is not a good sign. He also didn't get a very good exit off the final corner. Axelsen's on the hybrid, he's up the inside, he's going to go back through into the race lead. Eric Axelsen side by side with one of his championship rivals. It's such a long drag down that pit straight, though, that the hybrid and the superior exit and the slipstream were all enough to combine with a new race leader, or a return to the race lead, shall we say, for Eric Axelsen by the time they reach turn 1. And he once again now has control of the race. He has the tyres that should last longer in theory. Is this Axelsen's moment where he pulls away into a comfortable victory, or has Felvers got an answer for him?
I was going to say, Andy, I think you know just as well as I do, as well as the viewers and everybody involved in VRRC, that Carl Felvers, he doesn't take things lying down, does he? He's one to respond really rather quickly. But to respond, he has to be close enough to have a go, doesn't he? And Eric Axelsen, who's using the hybrid at an interesting part of the circuit, this is towards the sort of back straight now, just to pull that gap. And as he's going to go into the uphill left-hander and then into the hairpin, he's going to have about an 9/10 gap now to Carl Felvers. So all of a sudden, you're right, he's got into the race lead. He's trying to stretch his legs and get away.
Yeah, absolutely. Lewis Edwards is suggesting that Eric may be hammering the hybrid button on this lap to get away. He doesn't need to. He's getting away anyway. He does now touch the hybrid, actually, as he comes out of the hairpin. But, yeah, he wasn't really needing that. He pulled most of that gap through the twisty, turny middle sector. And Carl Felvers now really starting to struggle. And, of course, don't forget that Joel Lask in third place is also on the medium tyres. So from a championship perspective, this could be a gamble on the softs that really doesn't pay off for Carl Felvers. He's 1.3 seconds back, and Lask is closing very, very rapidly. All of them using the hybrid down the main straight, as you would expect. Axelsen getting away. The battle now, Jack, becomes for second.
Yeah, well, actually, there's an argument to say that if Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who's just appearing on your screen at the top end, he's not that far away, 8.5 minutes, and if Carl Felvers' soft tyres are dropping off a cliff like we're sort of going to expect them to, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who's also on the medium, could be within a shout of a podium place if he just keeps it nice and calm and decides, you know, just put in the consistent laps and wait for Carl Felvers to come into his clutches, because you never know at this point. His rate of degradation has been so great that, you know, it's taken a few drivers, I think Carl Felvers in particular, by surprise.
Absolutely, and everybody on the softs is struggling. Ethan Hill is dropping away from Dalton-Ayres. Nicky Taylor is struggling to recover after that moment that he had on the opening lap of the race too. So the medium tyre, it seems like you have to go through a little bit of pain maybe in the first few laps, but then it comes to you, and that's exactly what is supposed to happen. This is why we have these different tyre compounds that now, after a bit of mid-season tweaking, really do have very different operational windows, and that makes for some really interesting racing. Carl Felvers now needs to try and draw upon, I was going to say, his years of experience. He still is only a teenager, but he's been sim racing for a while, and he's going to have to draw on all the experience he's got to keep Lask at bay, but I don't think it will be enough. Lask is up the inside into the last corner. He had, again, superior traction off the hairpin, and he slots in of Kyle Felvers, and Kyle now needs to go into damage limitation mode, doesn't he, Jack? He needs to make sure that he doesn't lose too much time fighting with Lask, try and tag along with him and stop Elliot Dalton-Ayres catching him and taking more points off him.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes using your experience, as you well know, Andy, it means that, you know, to accept defeat when it appears in front of you and to just try and make sure that you are, again, damage limitation. And I think that's exactly what we saw Carl Felvers do there. He was hunkered up behind Joel Lask, knowing that he wasn't going to have the ultimate pace to get past it. There's no point. Just push him along, try and use him as slipstream to keep ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres. We've got 7 minutes nearly to go, and I'm just looking at that previous lap time. Dalton-Ayres at 1:34.1. Carl Felvers at 1:35.1, so a full second difference between the fourth and now third place driver there.
Dalton-Ayres, by the way, having a good night, flying under the radar a little bit here in fourth place. Remember, he arrives at Bridgehampton, 6th place in the championship, but only 18 points away from the top 4, and both Josh Martin and Nicky Taylor are having a bit of a nightmare here. Taylor has just moved into 7th place, Martin up into 8th. They both just gained a place on that previous lap, but They are both being outscored at the moment by Elliot Dalton-Ayres pretty comprehensively, so that gap is going to start coming down in the fight to be sort of best of the rest, really, behind the 3 championship front-runners, who, yet again, as we've seen so many times this season, have established themselves at the front of the field. 6 minutes to go in this first race of the second half of the season, and Eric Axel is now 2.3 seconds to the good. It does seem to me, though, Jack, like Felvis is sort of hanging on to the coattails of Joel Lask a bit better than he did Axelson. He's dropping away, but only by a few tenths at a time.
Yeah, the time is the stopwatch is the real truth, isn't it? And as he comes across the line, we'll be able to see what his update is, 134.8, so it was 3 or 4 tenths quicker on that lap, but it was more the point that Elliot Dalton-Ayres was actually about 6 tenths slower on that lap. Maybe didn't use the hybrid as much. In fact, actually, if you look at the hybrid situation, Dalton-Ayres has only got 2 left. Carl Felvis has got 4. Joel Lask has got 5. He's got the most out of all the top 4. Andy Carroll, just want to give him a quick shout out as well. He's right on the heels of Ethan Hill. There he is, in fact. Just very quickly to mention him because he's doing a great job. Ethan Hill, obviously, was fighting with Dalton-Ayres once upon a time. That fight has somewhat diminished, as we've seen out on circuit over the course of this race, but still very impressive. With Carl Felvis, did I just miss that looking at my timing screen, or did we miss it entirely? He's got past Joel Lask and a big snap of oversteer.
I may or may not have spotted Joel Lask running wide just as we cut away from him, but he's back into second place now, or is he? He's up the inside of Felvis anyway. And this is really not what Felvis needs, because this side-by-side battling is delaying them and allowing Dalton-Ayres to close in. He's about 4 tenths closer to Felvis now than he was at the start of the lap. Felvis has not been able to retain second place anyway, so Joel Lask's mistake there, on the face of it, good news for Carl Felvis, but actually ended up costing him time. Look how much closer the red and black car in 4th place is to them now. You've got 3 of them in the same shot as they come off the hairpin. Joel Lask in 2nd, Kyle Felvis 3rd, and Elliot Dalton-Ayres in 4th. But that was a great example there. It was a tiny mistake coming out of the first corner, I think it was, for Lask. Just dip 2 wheels onto the dirt, but you lose so much traction and so much momentum coming off the corner, and it's a real momentum circuit, this, and that's what briefly cost him second place.
Yeah, well, it's not really dirt, is it? It's a sand trap out here at Bridgehampton, which I don't know whether AC is smart enough to think that sand is going to be worse than dirt to slow you down, but it really does hold you up for whatever reason here on this modification of the game. So it's, yeah, I think it's good, to be honest. I think that means you can pretty much get rid of track limits. If going off the circuit hurts you that badly in terms of lap time, then I think I'm all for it, to be honest. I'd rather it be like this rather than have to deal with photos and track limits and all those sorts of rubbish regulations that the likes of Formula 1 and BTCC and real life racing have to deal with at MSV circuits. I'd much rather it be like this, where you just get punished by nature around you.
Yep, I'm 100% in agreement with that. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, I think, is about to punish Carl Felvis for his tyre choice. He's closed right in on him. Andy Carroll here, meanwhile, with a very Andy Carroll-like performance, goes up the inside of Ethan Hill. He's crept into the top 5. How many times this season, Jack, have we seen Andy Carroll pop up in the top 5 at the end of the race, and we haven't even mentioned him all race? He is, I think, one of the best out there, actually, at saving tyres, at always being on the right tyre as well, and at really maximising that in the second part of the race. He's into the top 5, but he's got a couple of fast charging drivers trying to follow him through here. Josh Martin behind Ethan Hill, with Nicky Taylor closing in 2. So those are 2 drivers, both trying to recover after first lap shenanigans, and they're both now seeing whether or not they're able to find a way past Ethan Hill before Andy Carroll disappears too far up the road.
Yeah, well, of course, Ethan Hill is on the soft tyres. If anybody's wondering what his capitulation is about, it's probably something to do with the tyre compound. He seems to be suffering just as bad, as, if not worse, than Carl Felvis. As Josh Martin looks up his inside, almost a little bit of a squeeze there by Ethan Hill, but I think he should probably know better than that. I think Josh Martin did get run a little bit wide on the exit, and of course, it's probably one of the most important corners on the entire circuit, because you get a really long run down towards turn 1. How is Ethan Hill going to be? He's going to be on the inside just about. He's almost alongside. I think he is fully alongside, and in fact, actually, his note is ahead now of Josh Martin. Squeezes him onto the apex of the first corner. They don't make contact, which is a relief for all involved, as Josh looks up the inside into turn 3. There is contact that time. Both drivers go spinning off. Josh Martin doesn't go spinning off. Ethan Hill comes back on the circuit, though, as well, thankfully. And it looks like they're going to reignite it pretty much instantly.
Yes, that was fairly predictable, wasn't it, really? As soon as I saw Josh Martin jink to the inside, it had disaster written all over it, and indeed that was correct. So Josh Martin loses out. Probably find himself in a spot of bother for that post-race as well, and it is, as you said, Nicky Taylor who benefits the most from that. Right, 3rd placed battle. We are nearly at the end of the race. The next lap should be the last one, so Carl Felvis only needs to defend for 1.5 laps, and that's Lask off the road. contact. Dalton goes into second, Fells is sideways, almost collects Joel Lasker's. They come off the hairpin. What on earth happened there? Joel Lasker's thrown away second place, and he's slowing. He's letting Felvers back through. Carl Felvers is not happy about any of that, and you can't really blame him. Dalton Ayres into second, Felvers third, and Lasker's just thrown away second place. How significant could that mistake prove to be at the end of the season, Jack?
Well, yeah, that could be massive, couldn't it? But I mean, at the end of the day, Carl Felvers not very happy with Joel Lask obviously being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'm sure Joel Lask is probably angrier than the rest of them. He's going to go try and go around the outside of Carl Felvers now. The last thing we want to see is any contact, because that really will, I suppose, anger Kyle Felvers and his oncoming fan base as well. Because they are in the YouTube chat, disgruntled as you can imagine. But those soft tyres, I think he's going to be a bit of a sitting duck on Joel Lask right now. There's contact, and there's more contact as they move over. And I think Carl Felvers just about holds the car together. Joel Lask was probably a good enough driver to actually come off the throttle and allow Carl Felvers to stay ahead of him. Or good sportsmanship rather than a good driver, I should say, actually. He stays in fourth. Carl Felvers in third. Dalton Ayres, though, in second place.
Don't know what to say about anything we've seen over the last 60 seconds or so. That has turned the race on its head. The time has ticked down to 0. This is the final lap. Eric Axelson's going to take a very comfortable win, but quite frankly, that's not the story here. The story is about what happened behind him. Elliot Dalton Ayres stealing second place here from this race. He was making the move on Felvers anyway, and then they came across an out-of-control Joel Lask at this part of the track a lap ago. Joel has got no grip, even on the medium tyres. He's sliding around, coming off the corners, and that might just be enough to allow Felvers to hang on to second place. Eric Axelsson, though, is already on his way to the checkered flag, and for the Swede, this is going to become his, would you believe, only second victory of the season, but it extends his championship lead. Second place to Elliot Dalton Ayres. A fortuitous one, yes, but he was peaking at the right time in that race, wasn't he? Closing in on the front runners. Third place will be a slightly disgruntled Kyle Felvers, I would imagine, and Joel Lask comes home an even more disgruntled place. Andy Carroll will have something to smile about, though. Another solid top 5 there ahead of Jens Verhoeven, who got ahead of Nicky Taylor at the end of the race. He was on medium tyres, I suppose, maybe just had more pace at the end, but anyway, Verhoeven gets back ahead of Nicky Taylor. Ethan Hill, Josh Martin and Sam Zero round out the top 10, with Nathan Blank, Paul Laramie and John Jones rounding out the 13 runners. Well, an awful lot to discuss after that race. We will be having all of those discussions in just a few minutes' time with our podium finishers. Well, to say that the second half of the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Cup has got off to a dramatic start would be a little bit of an understatement. A dramatic lead battle in the early stages, a victory for Eric Axelsson, but absolute carnage behind him, all of it with championship implications. There's a lot to unpack after the first race of the night here at Bridgehampton, and we can begin that process by chatting for the second time tonight with Eric Axelsson. He was on pole position from that race. He won the race by 7.5 seconds. Eric, you're going to tell me that that wasn't as easy as it looked. To be fair, it didn't look that easy, at least the first half of the race.
No, it was. Well, I was a little bit. It was a little bit sketchy the first laps, and I did small mistakes here and there. I don't know if you catch it on stream, but I broke. I was braking a little late for the hairpin and touched the sand, the grass, and Kyle was able to overtake me. But yeah, it was. It's a really scary track, and to drive a 2x2, it's so good, man. It's really fun.
We didn't actually see the moments at the hairpin, so you could have got away with that, but we did wonder why you'd lost the lead briefly. In fairness, you weren't the only one to get it wrong. Joel, last kind of moment there as well at the end. It seems like one of those tracks that will really punish you if it all goes wrong. That being taken into consideration, you must be happy to come out of that with maximum points and a bigger championship lead now.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that to myself when I was behind Kyle. I'm just going for the fastest lap and be happy with the second place. But then I got a good run on him, and well, I took the chance anyway. But yeah, I would have been happy with the P2, to be honest.
I think I know the answer to this next question, Eric. Are you as excited about the prospect of a reversed grid race as we are?
Well, to be honest, I talked to Josh before the race, and he said he would be happier to start in the back than in the middle. So yeah, I think I agree with him.
We'll see if that holds true. Eric, congratulations.
Thank you.
Axelsen gets his second win of the season. Behind him, though, Jack, is where most of the action was in the second half of that race.
Yeah, I think we've only got a couple of minutes, Elliot, to have a chat. But of course, he came home in second place in the end. We could spend 10 minutes trying to dissect that race from your perspective, couldn't we? But first of all, congratulations on second. I don't reckon you expected to finish there after the first half of that race, though.
No, not really. I kind of saw Joel go off, and Kyle kind of like stayed to the left, so I just took the chance and accidentally hit Kyle, which dropped him down a bit, but kind of kept going and took the second.
I was going to say after that. I mean, previous to the incident, that sort of middle third of the race, though, you seem to find some pace, didn't you? Were you sort of waiting for Kyle's tires to fall off the edge and you're reeling him in? Were you keeping calm, or were you getting a little bit excited?
I was getting a bit excited seeing the delta of Kyle coming a bit down, and then kind of just saw Joel overtake him, and then yeah, saw that his tires were going. He was a bit all over the place, so just went for it.
Well, you certainly went for it. That's for sure. And obviously, it's all provisional at the moment, but you did end up with second place. So big congratulations to you. We'll let you go and concentrate for race number 2.
Thank you.
Yes, good stuff there from Elliot Dalton Ayres. It was certainly an entertaining race for our third place finisher, Kyle Felvers. Kyle, I know you're not going to be happy with the way that race ended, but it had been a bit of an uphill struggle all along, it seemed. Those soft tyres, in hindsight, maybe not the right choice.
No, it was a test dummy. But all I'll say is I appreciate Joel for giving that back up. He didn't have to. He may have felt that it was his fault for causing that, but normally people will go a bit cautious when a driver's trying to come back on track and not send it up the inside. But we live and we learn and we carry on. But next race we'll go mediums.
Yeah, I think that's going to be more sensible, isn't it? And there's always an opportunity in these reverse grid races to turn your night around. You've lost a few points there, but you're now starting a few places ahead of your championship rivals. So you can take maybe a little bit of inspiration from that.
Yeah, it should be good. We'll just hope that it's not a repeat of race 1.
Indeed so. We hope that for you as well, Kyle. We'll let you go and prepare for that race, but congratulations anyway on making the podium.
Thank you.
So, lot of strong feelings after that race, Jack. You can tell we're getting down to the business end of a championship, can't you?
Yes, I think you can. And to be fair, off air, I did make the sort of slight point. Oh, well, I attempted to make the slight point to Kyle that actually, I think, even though it potentially shouldn't have happened the way it did, he ended up with a third place where pace-wise, at the end of the race, he probably should have finished in fourth. We would have expected Elliot Dalton to get past him and him to finish third, and Joel Lask to finish in second. Now, I appreciate that Kyle was saying that he's letting somebody back on the circuit and everything like that, and yeah, potentially Elliot should have been a little bit more patient, but that is all for the stewards to decide later on. But what I would say is the fact that Kyle ended up with a third place where he should have finished in fourth. So although he won't like it, he's actually probably ended up scoring more points. So I think maybe in hindsight, he'll probably appreciate that a little bit once the evening is over. For me personally, and probably for you, Andy, I'm actually hoping for a repeat of race one. I know Kyle isn't, but it was very entertaining.
It certainly was, and of course now we get to involve Eric Axelsen in a bit more of that battle. He had his fight with Felvis in the early stages, really should have had an easier time of it had it not been for that mistake at the hairpin. Now he's not going to have an easy time of it at all because Eric has to come the very back of the grid. We had no non-finishers from that race, so it's a full 13-car reverse with John Jones and Paul Laramie row 1, then Ethan Blank and Sam Zero row 2. Keep an eye to that third row, Josh Martin and Ethan Hill, 2 quick drivers, and of course our podium finishers from the earlier race, all starting outside of the top 10. 20 minutes on the clock, the red light to go out, and John Jones makes a decent start there from pole position. A bit too much wheel spin for Paul Laramie. Andy Carroll is away well from further back, and look at that, 3 wide already between Axelsen, Dalton Ayres and Felvis. They head for the first contact, and Felvis in the barriers. Axelsen, I think, was involved in that too, and that is big drama. Paul Laramie is sideways, but what has happened to our championship frontrunner? Axelsen is at the back with damage, I fear, and it was Elliot Dalton Ayres. I think it was caught up as well. There's another spin there. Sam Zero's off the road coming out of turn 1, and I think the safety car is going to be scrambled here, the virtual safety car anyway. Any big incidents like that on the first lap, we were told, were going to result in a safety car, but no, they were going 3 wide into turn 1 there. Axelsen was the meat in the sandwich, and the next thing you know, he's in the barriers, so there must have been contact with whom, I don't know. How much damage has been done to that number 75 car? If he has to pit, that could take him out of contention altogether.
Yeah, we don't get to see what exactly happened at the start of the race, obviously. Unfortunately, we don't have the replay capability. But what I would say is we've seen that happen before, real life racing and sim racing. 3 wide, and then all of a sudden a little bit of a closing. I think it was a Silverstone this year, actually. We saw it off the start line. Potentially Pierre Gasly, I can't remember now. But yeah, you end up with 3 wide, and then somebody closing, and the person in the middle has nowhere to go. The person on the right doesn't know the person on the very left is there, and vice versa. And all of a sudden, you get this pincer movement, and I think that's exactly what we saw with the likes of Carl Felvis and Eric Axelsen. I'm sure they'll give us their versions of events if they do end up getting on the podium, which I wouldn't put it past either of them, to be honest, as long as there is no more drama, and Eric Axelsen nearly going into the back of John Jones, almost causing that exact drama.
How bad is the car? How bad is the damage? The steering looks straight, but if there's suspension damage, that will be affecting him, especially around a circuit as demanding as this. Josh Martin, by the way, is in the lead. I would love to tell you how he got there. I haven't got the foggiest, but he's got the lead. Nathan Blank is second, Ethan Hill third, Jens Verhoeven fourth, Joel Lask fifth. So Lask came out of that well, didn't he? He's into the top 5 already, and with Axelsen perhaps in trouble, this could be another big turning point in the championship. We come towards the end of the first lap. The virtual safety car will be withdrawn at the end of this lap, so we're about to go back to racing again. Everyone is on the medium tyres by the looks of it as well, so we don't have as much of the tyre strategy in this one. It is a straight up reverse grid race. The hybrid buttons start to illuminate, which means they're back up to speed, and they roar towards the first corner. Keep an eye to Ethan Hill in third position. He's on the tail of Nathan Blank. Should be quicker than the second place man. He's on the hybrid, looks to the outside, but Nathan, in fairness, stands his ground as he's entitled to do, and they all stay in the same order for now.
They do indeed, and Josh, oh, Nathan Blank looking at the inside. Is there going to be contact? I think there was a touch of contact there, but not enough to throw Josh Martin off the circuit, I think, but enough for Nathan Blank to slot in behind Ethan Hill. Although, will he slot in behind, or will he throw it up the inside? We'll have to wait and see. If there we go, Ethan Hill carries the momentum, misses the second apex just a touch, but Josh Martin retains that lead for the time being. Jens Verhoeven has managed to hold on to 4th place. Joel Lask is up to 5th place, and well, we didn't see what his start was like, but it could assume pretty good. Carl Felvis up to 6th as well. I don't think Carl Felvis was the driver that's actually involved in that pit lane crash. I think it might have been his teammate Nicky Taylor, because he ended up behind Carl Felvis. I could be wrong, but I think that's potentially how it went. We saw one of the HFT cars in the wall, that's all I know.
Yeah, same. That's all I could tell from that angle, so you may well be right on that, because Felvers seems to be running well. Josh Martin flirting with disaster there through the hairpin, right up to the edge of the road, and he needs to push on now, because Ethan Hill was a bit quicker than him in the previous race, wasn't he? Has been all night, seemingly, and he is into second place. But the man we need to watch, the two men we need to watch really now for the championship, are Joel Lask and Kyle Felvers. They need to take advantage of Axelson's issues, and that was Lask doing just that up the inside of Nathan Blank for third. Nicky Taylor goes ahead of Kyle Felvers. That is not something I expected. Nicky Taylor moving ahead of his teammate. Maybe it was Felvers. Maybe he's got some damage. Let's see if we can see. Kyle Felvers tucks in behind his teammate, but I would be very surprised if Nicky Taylor went on the attack there to get past Felvers. I suspect that was an orchestrated move.
Or a slight mistake from Felvers, which he hasn't bothered to retaliate on. It's going to be, a little bit interesting. You mentioned the championship there. Eric Axelsson 177. Carl Felvers 176. Who's just gone spinning off there is Nathan Blank. I just saw a big puff of smoke as I was looking back over at my racing screen, and all of a sudden there was a car off the circuit. I thought it was going to be Carl Felvers, but no, it's Nathan Blank, and he does half another pirouette and then rejoins the circuit, unfortunately. But yes, only 1 point between Eric Axelsson and Carl Felvers, which is exactly the difference between Eric Axelsson and Joel Lask at the beginning of this evening.
Yes, although I suspect part of that is that the points calculator is perhaps getting confused by drop scores. I think it counts this as a drop score until the second race is added in. I may be wrong on that, but we shall see after this race, I guess. It means that when we get to the last round, actually we don't need to worry about that for the last round, because there's only one race at the last round, which is excellent news for me, because maths never was my strongest subject. Out of the hairpin we go again. Ethan Hill is in the pit lane. Now, I was just looking at the point spreadsheet when you were talking, Jack. Did you spot why Ethan's in the pit?
Absolutely no idea, unfortunately. I think he drove into the pit, which means it's not an instant disqualification, but then he went past his pit box, and then he spawned back to the pit. So I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen there with Ethan Hill. All I know is he's about to get lapped, so he's not going to be relevant in the standings towards the end of the race. Anyway, but it's a big shame, because Ethan Hill has actually put himself about a little bit today. He was finally on the right tyre for the second race. I thought maybe we'll see a bit more of a representative race from him, but it wasn't to be, unfortunately. Carl Felvers is definitely following, though, his teammate, isn't he? Nicky Taylor, who's almost probably hoping to use him as a bit of a battering ram here to try and upset the likes of Joel Lask and Josh Martin up ahead of them. I have to say, Josh Martin doing a good job. It's race 1 pace and his qualifying pace. I wasn't expecting him to be leading a race for this long. So the fact that he is up there and he's 1.1 seconds ahead of Joel Lask is fairly impressive.
Absolutely right. Just to try and piece together the Ethan Hill thing, I did spot about a lap ago a puff of dust at the hairpin, I think it was. A bit like that black dust we saw kicked up by Andy Carroll in the background, but no obvious reason for it. So I suspect Ethan had gone off, hit the wall, and then teleported back to the pit lane. The dust was left there, but the car was no longer there when we saw it, if you see what I mean. So I suspect he did teleport back, and then what the movement we saw from him in the pit box was that he was trying to rejoin the track and then remembered he wasn't allowed to. Right, Eric Axelsson is in the top 5. The car clearly is not that badly damaged. He is doing what he does so well and salvaging points, which is more than could be said for Sam Zero, who does a little bit of grass tracking there, comes almost to a complete stop and rejoins just out of the way of John Jones, who moves up into a reasonably impressive 8th place.
Yes, that was bordering on an unsafe rejoin, wasn't it? I think we could just be glad that there was only one car trying to squeeze through that gap in the form of John Jones. You're right, Eric Axelsson is up to 5th. What is his lap times like? I'm going to wait until they all cross the line to read out what their previous lap time was. Remember, Carl Felvers has got the slipstream provided to him by Nicky Taylor. Elliot Dalton has just gone purple in sector 3. Carl Felvers 34.6, Eric Axelsson 35 dead. So there is a speed advantage for Carl Felvers and Nicky Taylor, who in turn actually is 3 tenths quicker than Carl Felvers and Joel Lask actually. And is in fact actually the quickest driver out there. So no wonder that Carl Felvers has decided to hunker up behind his teammate, because Nicky Taylor is on a mission.
Yes, but Felvers has been quicker than Nicky all night, and this is why I'm suspecting he is carrying some damage from the incident on the first lap. The trouble is he's got a bit more black on the side of his car, hasn't he? His livery is a bit different to his teammate Nicky Taylor's, and I think that's covering up some of the witness marks from that contact that I suspect he was in at the start. But yeah, the fact he's dropping away from Nicky Taylor here, they're all on the same tyres, remember, that sort of suggests that he is in trouble. He's being caught as well by Axelsen. Axelsen could yet outscore Carl Felvis in this race. That gap keeps on coming down. It's down to about 2.5 seconds now. Felvis to Axelsen. We're still over half the race to go. And Lask's off again. He's done it again at the same corner. Joel Lask off at the hairpin, and he will drop behind both the HFT racing drivers. I was just about to mention that he'd almost caught Josh Martin, but now, unfortunately, the hard work has to start again.
You could probably argue that last race it was a bit of an error that, you know, maybe he didn't know the track as well. Maybe it was just a bit of a mistake. This one, he's been off there once already. You need to learn from your mistakes, and Joel Lask clearly either didn't learn from his mistake, or he's pushing so hard to try and take a race victory from Josh Martin that he ended up just making the mistake because he was pushing that hard and maybe just forgot. You know, we are just amateur sim racers here. We are all human. We do make those kind of mistakes in sim racing. So, got to forgive him slightly. Luckily, this time round, though, I'm sure Carl Felvis probably came around the corner, saw that, and thought, oh my god, deja vu. But luckily, there was no kind of contact this time.
For yourself, Jack. Mistakes? I don't know what you're talking about. Josh Martin has just made a little mistake, we're hearing. He's been out wide as well. That means that Nicky Taylor is now starting to sniff an opportunity for a race win. These two have been pretty evenly matched, I think, tonight on raw pace. And Nicky Taylor, not under any pressure from behind here, could still have an opportunity to get himself his first victory of the season. Nicky Taylor's only had the one podium. He's not really been enjoying this car quite as much as some of the front-wheel drive cars that he's had success in the past, and he is very much sort of playing a supporting role to his teammate. Now, if, and it's a big if, but if Nicky Taylor can get ahead of Josh Martin, he then can be of more assistance to Felvis, can't he? Because he could, in theory, try and back Martin up into Kyle and perhaps try and orchestrate a Carl Felvis win after all. Kyle, at the moment, is keeping Joel Lask at arm's length, so if Nicky Taylor gets a move on here, gets ahead of Josh Martin, that could become the HFT plan.
It could indeed. I just want to give a quick mention, though, to the hybrid situation as well. Only because, whilst he was talking through that, I was just keeping an eye on it slightly. Joel Lask, who's just dropped under the double digits margin for the amount of hybrid that he's got left. There could be a recovery drive on here, because Joel Lask probably hasn't got a damaged car, albeit Carl Felvis will have the right tyres on now, but Joel, with those extra 2 or 3 hybrid, maybe 4 actually, that he's got under the bonnet, I think there could be a bit of a threat here for Carl Felvis still yet to come in the last 9.5 minutes. Speaking of a threat, your plan could start coming into action here, and I'm going to call it your plan, and I think Nicky Taylor will probably be hearing that over the radio, probably thinking, yeah, go on then, I'll give that a go. Let's get ahead of Josh, and let's hold him up.
If it works, then Nicky, I'm sure, will claim that he'd come up with this plan himself. Don't believe him, ladies and gentlemen. It was all down to me, I'm sure. He's definitely in the wheel tracks of the race leader. Eric Axelsen, by the way, is also continuing to close in on Felvis and Lask too. So we could have a 5-way shootout for the victory here going into the final third of the race. This reverse grid race is all coming together rather nicely, isn't it? Josh Martin in the lead is slower than most of the cars behind him, and Eric Axelsen in 5th is quicker than most, if not all, of the cars ahead of him. So they're all continuing together, and there's still bags of time for this to all change around. Josh Martin heads through the hairpin where so many drivers have got it wrong, and you can see how easy it is to drift too wide through that hairpin. It's the corner that Rich Hayden was warning us before we went live tonight, was the trouble spot. It's where people were going to make mistakes, and that has proven to be the case. Nicky Taylor is all over the race leader Josh Martin now as they head into the last corner. Josh defending into that last corner, and that will compromise his exit speed. Nicky Taylor will, I'm sure, be in the slipstream. Interestingly, doesn't jump immediately for the hybrid. Everybody around him does, but then Taylor goes for it, and that means his hybrid will last a little bit longer. The Crocodile weaves one way, back the other. Defensive lines being taken here by Josh Martin to try and shake off his pursuers, who are getting closer and closer by the corner.
You get the feeling it's inevitable at this rate, don't you? That these guys are going to bunch up. You said that it's potentially going to be a 4, maybe a 5-way battle. I'm going to go one further. Elliot Dalton-Ayres is running the same pace as Eric Axelsen. So if Eric can catch up, I reckon that means Elliot can as well, and that is going to throw a spanner in the works, because I'm very excited to see how much he can go for in this second race. He's one of my drivers for driver of the day at the moment, is Elliot Dalton-Ayres, even though there was that contact. Nicky Taylor at the inside, that could be a move to really slow them up, but in fact all it's done is slow himself up, and his HFT teammate Carl Felvis tries to take advantage of that. Joel Lask going through as well, and Nicky Taylor, who goes from 2nd down to 4th as Carl Felvis goes for the race lead.
Wow, things you never thought you'd see in this race. The way Felvers' first half of the race was, maybe he was just saving tyres, expecting that he would be able to close in on the leaders later on. He didn't quite get the lead, but this has really bunched them all back together again. It's now Martin who leads from Felvers, and Lask is up the inside. Joel Lask with a really opportunistic move through the corner where it's all gone wrong for him on more than one occasion so far tonight. Almost yields second place. This has got trouble written all over it. 6 3/4 minutes to go. Championship on the line, and they're all right on top of each other into the last corner. Lask up the inside line. That's so hard to do through that off-camber right-hander. Did he make the move stick? They're all still there at least, and Lask does appear to have a run. He's less than a tenth behind Felvers. All of them jumping on the hybrid. Martin somehow hanging on to the lead, but behind him, two of our championship favourites are door-to-door at the fastest part of the circuit.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit nerve-wracking for the HFT supporters in the YouTube chat, I'm sure. Nicky Taylor is there playing rear gunner, but he's not able to try and get past Carl Felvers to then have a go at Joel Lask. All Nicky Taylor can really do is try and hold off the charging Swedish assassin that we call Eric Axelsson, who's currently in 5th, not quite joining the party just yet, as Josh Martin still leads the way and has done for the last 14 minutes. I'm not 100% sure. I'm confident that he'll be able to lead it for the last 6 minutes, but I'll be very impressed if he does.
Eric Axelsson not joining the party, I think out of choice. I think he's absolutely got the pace to be there, but he can see that this is all going to kick off. Honestly, I would not be surprised if we do get the chance to talk to him after the race. Would not be surprised to hear that he's just hanging back here and waiting to see how this all unravels, because I think it could unravel, and fairly significantly. Into the last couple of corners they go. Martin leading somehow still. Lask in 2nd. Felvers back down to 3rd now, and that from a championship perspective has its ramifications as well. Through the hairpin to go now. Axelsson has now closed in, perhaps trying to prove me wrong. It is now the 5 of them in. Exactly, they're so slow. They're all holding each other up, and that's going to continue into the last corner, because again Martin defends the inside line, tries to hold on to the lead, tries to back Lask up into the traffic behind, and it works. Lask is sideways at the last corner. He's off the road for the time tonight, and he's off the road completely. That could be crucial for Joel Lask. He's falling right down the order and could be out of the race, Jack.
I'll tell you what, this could be a defensive masterclass from Josh Martin at this point. I think Joel Lask has had a night to forget in the amount of errors that he's made, as Eric Axelsson is up the inside of Nicky Taylor. No, he's not quite, is he? I think he just probably thought better of that and let the HFT teammates go off, try and catch up to Josh Martin and see if he can have another little pop at it. And if Eric Axelsson can get a podium out of this after being in the wall on lap 1, pretty sure one of the HFT boys was in there with him, not sure which one though. Be very, very good night's work for him as he goes alongside Nicky Taylor. Going to get around the outside. Now there it is, ambitious move, Andy. If we've seen one, he just has a little bit of contact which didn't allow him to get back onto the circuit in the way that he wanted to, but he does survive to fight another day.
Honestly, Eric, cut your losses, settle for 4th place. It could still become a podium, and if you start trying to go around the outside of Nicky Taylor, it's only going to end one way. Let's be completely honest. Nicky Taylor hasn't had that many opportunities to have podiums this season. He's trying to play rear gunner for his championship contending teammate. Just play the percentages here, Eric, and bag the points that you can. I think he's maybe thinking along those lines as well. Drops back by a few more car lengths through the middle sector. We'll see whether he does try and close back in. He may, again, have no choice there because they're bunching together at the front. Josh Martin really starting to struggle through that middle part of the lap, isn't he? The HFT teammates now will surely try and gang up on him. Nicky Taylor is giving the bumper to Carl Felvers, pushing him up the hill towards the last corner. The move won't happen here, but he might be able to tee up the move down the pit straight. Felvers is visibly quicker through the final corner. 3.5 minutes to go. Again, the hybrid buttons start to flash. Felvers this time going for it later, or perhaps not at all, actually dropping away from Josh Martin. He did only have 2 hybrids left, and the fact that he's not used it now means they're all pretty level on available hybrid use over these final few laps.
I'll tell you what, this is such an undulating and difficult circuit. I'm just hoping this bump drafting doesn't come and kick them up the backside, because of course all it takes is one little mistake, one angle slightly wrong while you're making that contact to try and push the other car along. All of a sudden both cars are into a wall, aren't they, or off the track at least, and that could be game over for both of them. They seem to be working well together for the time being. They certainly have had their differences in the past, shall we say. There's been a little bit of friction in the HFT team quite a few times, to be honest, since racing it in the VRRC. We like to stir the pot a little bit as well with the interviews, but they're certainly working well together, and it's always very impressive that these drivers are able to put the last race behind them and go again and work together to try and get at least one of them on the top step of the podium, and hopefully more to lock out the podium entirely. Josh Martin is trying his absolute best, though, to hold them up, and I think Dave Dave in the YouTube chat is absolutely right. I think there's a potential tactic involved here for Josh Martin. I don't think he's intentionally being slow, but I think he is intentionally putting his car in places where he knows Kyle Felvers doesn't want it to be.
But he knows where to defend. He knows
Yes.
where he's weak. He knows how to defend into those corners. And look, it's working. The hairpin is where he's vulnerable, so he covers the inside. There's no way through for Felvers, and he then drives the corner in such a way that Kyle can't get the corner as quickly as he probably has the potential to. Josh then again immediately jumps on that hybrid button. He's got 4 and a bit tenths on him now as they come out onto the pit straight. We are going to have time, are we? Yes, for 2 more laps. 1 minute and 40 odd left, and they're lapping in the mid 1 minute 34s or so. So there are 2 more laps of this for Josh Martin to withstand, but I just don't think Felvers has got the raw pace to do this. I really think if Nicky Taylor was in second place, they'd have a better chance of getting at least one past Josh Martin. But from a championship perspective, that's not what they want to do.
No, exactly. But if they switch, they hold each other up, then all of a sudden Eric Axelson's in on the party, and that would be disastrous for both of those drivers. So they're in a real catch-22 position right now. I don't think moving each other would be the right thing to do, slowing one of them up, because, again, as I said, you're just leaving yourself vulnerable for an Eric Axelson attack, and you might not get that race victory either, because Josh Martin has shown that he's been able to lead for 19 minutes, and it's not like he hasn't had pressure. He's probably going to be able to do it for another minute if you follow that logic. So it's very, very interesting to how these guys are going on. If they had different tyres on their car right now, we'd be able to sort of say with some more certainty that one is going to fall off rather than the other. But with them all on the same strategy, Nicky Taylor with the drift in there managed to catch Josh Martin's gone off.
Oh, Josh Martin at the hairpin strikes again, and just like that, all of that plotting and planning that we were going on about means nothing, because Josh Martin hands it to the HFT boys. Felvers gets the lead, Taylor second, Axelson is back on the podium. Now, what does Axelson do? Does he get greedy and try and get past Nicky Taylor? Or does he just settle for third, which is 100% what he should be doing? But will the racer in Axelson take over? He's in the slipstream now, up towards first corner. They're all grouping back together. The final lap of what has been the race of the season, no doubt about it. Might still have some more drama in store for us through the first corner. That really quick double apex right-hander, Axelson right there with them, onto the brakes into Colasanti corner at the top of the hill. This long right-hander, and now they make their way further towards the top end of the circuit, with Felvers leading, Taylor leading Axelson, the 3 of them covered by less than 0.3 of a second. Axelson wide line in. Taylor might surely not going to try and go for the win, is he? Has a big slide as they come out of the right-hander and down into Echo Valley. He now has to turn from attack to defence to try and keep Axelson behind him. Dabs on the brakes mid-corner. Felvers didn't, and that's why he ran wide over the dirt, but he's now less than half a lap away, is Kyle Felvers, from grabbing his 3rd victory of the season, and what could be a really crucial one of the championship, especially if his teammate Nicky Taylor can keep Axelson at bay. Through the quick left-handers, the middle part of the track is where Felvers has looked strong. He's gapping Nicky Taylor slightly into the hairpin. Doesn't look as though Nicky's going to have a shot for the victory. He runs wide, actually, and that might be Axelson's opportunity to get up the inside. Eric's got no hybrid left, though. Nicky Taylor has one left if he chooses to use it. He's defending into the last corner. Felvers looks good for the victory, but who will finish second? Round the outside, looks to go Eric Axelson. He needs to try the switch back. No, tries to go right round the outside. There's a bit of a door bang. Out wide will go Eric Axelson, and Taylor will hang on to second. It's a 3rd victory of the season, though, for Kyle Felvers. Across the line he goes. It's a HFT Racing 1-2, and one of the hardest fought victories that team have had in a long, long time. Eric Axelson 3rd, Josh Martin 4th, Elliot Altonaires in 5th position. What a race.
I tell you what, I bet they're fist pumping the air right now. I bet they're screaming. But Adrian Felvers downstairs watching on the YouTube chat can probably hear his son just ripping the house down, to be honest. That was very, very impressive by HFT. Hopefully we'll have a bit of a chat. It'll probably be a bit of a jollier chat as well, I imagine, especially with Kyle. But yeah, fantastic race result there. But as well by Eric Axelson, let's not forget he was in the wall early on. But let's give a quick shout out to Josh Martin, who did absolutely everything he could for 19 minutes and 20 seconds. And then one small mistake means he ends up finishing 4th, which isn't a bad result, but it could have been a lot better for him, couldn't it? So well done to Josh. But as we said, we're going to have a chat now to our podium sitters, Andy.
Hey, well, I can't wait to see what the championship standings look like after that one. That will definitely have changed things around, because Kyle Felvers, after what was not a brilliant first race for him, it must be said, he has managed to bounce back and get the race victory. And Kyle joins us in the commentary box now. I'm hoping, I've got everything crossed here, Kyle, that you're in a better mood now than you were about 20 minutes or so ago, because that was the race of the season, and I think one of your best victories we've seen.
Oh, yeah, that was brilliant. A HFT 1-2. Me and Nikki, oh, I wish you could hear you wouldn't want to hear the Google Meet. We're talking way too much, but it was just it was hysterical. It was so good. We were enjoying it so much, and definitely best race of the season.
Oh, we absolutely love that one. I mean, it's such a tough track to run side by side around. You can do it, but you have to put a lot of trust in the people around you. And you did a lot of side by side running there. There must have been a few moments, probably quite a few, where maybe you thought things were going to go quite wrong, but you had to score points in that one. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. The start was a bit funny. I think Nikki's wheel had some major issues with not shifting, so that got all got a bit scrappy. But then after that, we just made places. Me and Nikki worked together. I sort of worked with Nikki. Then Nikki made a mistake. I got ahead. Nikki worked with me, and the last couple of laps, actually, team orders were not happening at all. We were actually fighting each other. Just managed to stay ahead, get that win, and Nikki got P2, and I'm so happy it's a HFT 1-2 again.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because Nikki, we thought, was definitely helping you out through the early part of the race. Then he got past you midway through the race. Was that an orchestrated move? Did you feel like he was a bit quicker at that point of the race, or did you have a moment somewhere?
I think he was using push pass and I wasn't, and just went up the inside, and we obviously just called it, let Nikki have it, and then we worked together, which definitely worked in our favour, because we both got up there, and then Nikki made a slight mistake battling Josh, but so I managed to get through, and then we worked together again.
And it worked, an absolute treat. You managed to get the lead with all of the shenanigans at the end of the race. And it means actually it's not been a terrible night for you, really. We'll get confirmation of the points in a moment or two, but I think you're probably going to pretty much break even at least out of the night. And of course, now we move on into a completely different circuit in Sebring in a week's time. How confident are you that you can properly now put yourself in this championship battle next week?
Sebring's great track. Love that track. Did 12 hours on iRacing once in it. It's a mega track. It's tight for racing, and there's a lot of high curbs in places. Not very many physical braking markers either, so it's very like sort of guessing game. But it will be good.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that one. That is for sure. Well, Kyle, thank you for joining us. Congrats on that victory. That is your third win of the year. You've got more wins by quite a way than anybody else. So keep that going, and I'm sure we'll be talking about you as a championship contender still at the end of the season.
Thanks, Andy.
Kyle Felbus then gets the race victory, and it was, as we said, Jack, a HFT Racing 1-2. His teammate Nicky Taylor coming home in second place, and he can talk to you now.
Yeah, Nicky, I imagine that was, well, like Kyle just said, a very exciting chat that you guys were on with then. How proud are you of the HFT team, both you and Kyle, to be fighting right at the front so hard, but yet so well-timed and as a cohesive unit for the entirety of that race nearly?
Yeah, it's really good. I was quite impressed, to be fair, with my pace at the start. I was like, I'm not good in a rear-wheel drive car, so the minute I got up there, I was like, oh my god, I'm keeping with the pace. So the minute at the start of the race, I was like, so in the first race it was fine, and I missed my braking point because I was like, oh, I forgot there was a corner there that you had to brake for. So that's why I ended up in the gravel in the first race, and then on the second race start, I pressed my gear up shifter, and it literally didn't gear up. So I was sat on the grid like I've kind of stalled a car with my gear not going up. So then I eventually got it in first gear, and then went to go to second gear, and it didn't gear up again. So literally for the first whole lap, I was trying to gear, and every time I was trying to gear, it was like taking about 5 seconds to actually register. So that was eventful in the first lap. But yes, to be fair, from being turned round in the wall to I don't know how the hell that happened, to being P2 and with the chance of the victory, yeah, pretty decent.
I was going to say, I'm guessing some driving instructors were actually watching you sim racing then, because apparently you passed your real life driving test recently.
I did. I passed it earlier on today, so that I was nervous as hell this morning. So I passed that today, and I was like, I didn't do much practice at all. Literally, I think the practice I'd done about 2 hours outside of the server earlier on in the week, and then normally before a race night, I'll come in at like 5 or 4:30 when I get in from work and instantly be on. But tonight I was kind of on at about like 6:15, which is a bit late for me, and yeah, a bit later practice. But maybe I'm gonna have to start doing that more regularly because it seemed to work tonight. And next week I'm at Donington on Wednesday anyway for real life testing, so I might be back a bit late for may even just be able to do quali. So I'll have to make use of the practice sessions in the week.
Well, it's been one hell of a day for you then, passing your driving test, and then obviously coming on here and coming in second place. You're in for one hell of an adrenaline dump in a couple of minutes' time. But congratulations, Nicky. It was great having a chat to you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations to Nicky Taylor on all counts. Third place in that race was Eric Axelson, and Eric, that looked like a pretty tough race. First of all, what was your perspective of everything that happened at the start?
Well, yeah, I think I was the one who decided to go like 3 abreast, but it was very tight. I don't know if it was just not enough room. I think maybe I could have, lifted instead, been waiting out opportunities instead. But so I have to look at the replay, and I ended up in the wall. But then I tried to use the hybrids to get back as quick as I could, and yeah, it went pretty well. At the time when I was up at the P3, I only had one hybrid left, so it was really tough.
Yeah, I mean, you managed to get up there and then maybe could have finished second, actually, if you did have that extra hybrid. But all in all, a really good recovery drive. At the point that you were in the wall at the start of the race, what was going through your head? Because that could have been really crucial for the championship. I guess the first thing you need to figure out is, how badly damaged the car is, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. I was lucky that the suspension didn't take any damage. The worst thing was I got a cracked windshield, so it's a little tricky to see everything. But yeah, I just try to focus and try to calm myself down again and get the places back, and I think it worked.
Moment, a couple of laps, maybe 2/3 of the way through the race, where it looked like you'd caught the leaders. You were in 5th place. The top 4 were all fighting, and it almost looked like you just took a step back and sort of waited to see how that played out. Was there an element of trying to avoid further trouble at that point, or were you pushing as hard as you could throughout?
Well, I was pushing, but I didn't have. I don't think I had as many hybrids as they had, so I was saving the 1 or 2 hybrids that I had left, and hoping for them to make a mistake and use the hybrid wisely. So yeah, so I have to be happy with a P3 considering everything. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Some good points, and we think you've actually managed to extend your championship lead as a result of that result. So big congratulations, Eric. You dodged a bit of a bullet in that one, but in true Eric Axelson style, came through and managed to get on the podium anyway. Well done.
I sure did. Thank you, Andy.
Eric Axelson then back on the podium. Now, we haven't got him in here to speak to, but we have had a little vote about the driver of the round award, which, remember, there is a trophy on offer to the driver of our choosing who we think has performed the best. And Jack, we decided, I think, after a bit of a discussion, to go with Elliot Dalton-Ayres, because although the results in the end weren't necessarily, certainly in race 2, weren't necessarily what he was expecting and perhaps arguably deserved, he drove extremely well in those 2 races, got that really good second place in the earlier race, and then had it not been for that early contact, may well have been back on the podium in race 2.
Yeah, and we like to try and obviously give a shout out to drivers who have surprised us as well. I mean, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, he's a quick driver, but he's not exactly down the championship running. So we like to give sort of the appreciation to the drivers that have turned up. He didn't do loads of practice during the practice session. He turned up, he did well on the night at a brand new circuit, and we really enjoyed watching him. So yeah, congratulations to Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who unfortunately did log off a little bit quickly for us to have a quick chat with him. But yeah, a big sort of, I suppose, honourable mention to Kyle Felvers. And I think HFT as a whole for that second race were probably the team of the night, but we're giving it to Elliot for the personal account.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. HFT did a brilliant job and really managed that team situation well in race 2. And yes, it was a really strong night for both of their drivers. Right then, let's take a look, shall we, at the way that the points look, because I did suspect that this would have changed around a little bit after the drama that we've had tonight. And it has, which you wouldn't believe based on that first table, because that was the same points table we saw at the start of the night. But that is what it looks like now, again, with a drop score applied. And it's not quite as close now because, you know, Eric Axelson, he's like an old rover or something. You can beat it down, you can treat it badly for a long time, and yet still, it always seems to bounce back and be there at the end. And Eric Axelson, despite not having a stellar night by his standards, certainly race 2 could have gone very badly wrong, he's 12 points in front now.
He is, but that is taking into account all those complicated drop scores and everything, which is a bit annoying that we can't get rid of them until the penultimate round. But what I will say is, without going too deep into it, Eric Axelson has to be more consistent now up until the final round at Watkins Glen than Kyle Felvers. Eric Axelson is dropping 34 points at the moment. Kyle Felvers is dropping 40, which is a very good score for a drop round. It's a very high score for a drop round. So if Kyle ends up obviously DNFing a race, I would say, or coming further down, that'll turn into his drop score. He'll still score 40 points. So it's he's in a good position as Kyle Felvers to make a little bit of a charge further forward. And Joel Lask has dropped off a little bit more. It wasn't the best night for him. Too many individual errors, I believe. And Josh Martin, though, I think he's gone from 5th up to 4th. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, although he did well, he's got ahead of Nicky Taylor, I believe, by 2 points as well. Jens Verhoeven, Andy Cowell, Ethan Hill, Sam Zir, and John Jones. Ethan Hill, a bit of a shout out for him. Unfortunately, apparently the reason why he spawned back to the pits was completely by accident. Apparently, he just accidentally hit the teleport button, shall we call it, and ended up in the pits, and that is an automatic disqualification. So, yeah, really gutting for Ethan Hill, but that is why we didn't see him finish in the second race.
Oh dear, right. I wonder if we might recalibrate that button to something else before next week.
Maybe not the accelerator. That would be a good one.
Exactly. That's where I've been going wrong. Yes, absolutely. That's a shame for Ethan because he was driving well tonight, wasn't he? Yeah, interesting points situation. Worth mentioning, by the way, that Josh Martin there, that did become his dropped score tonight. So that's kind of why he has gained a place, even though it wasn't a terrific night for him. Also, Joel Lask, another who is dropping relatively few points after that disappointing opening round at Laguna Seca, 28 points. His dropped score, a score that he outscored by 4 points with his score tonight. That was a lot of scores. We'll move on from the score, shall we? And instead start to look ahead, because here at the VRRC, lots of racing coming up, including from the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Hybrid USA Tour, which does take the prize for the longest name in all of sim racing. Sebring is our venue for the next week's action, a 40-minute double-distance pit stop race, which certainly some drivers favour over others, and I wonder whether maybe that might tighten the championship up, or could it be the night on which Eric Axelson really starts to assert his authority? That will be same time, same place here at the VRRC, with our live coverage starting at about, 7:25 or so on Wednesday, the 12th of October. So that's the rest of the season here for the MX5s. But Jack, it's not just MX5 racing available here on the VRRC, is it?
Oh, no, don't be silly, Andy. There's plenty of other stuff to be getting involved with here at VRRC. You can see we've already chatted about the Mazdas at the top left, so we'll ignore that for the time being. Top right, you got the fun races and the pick and mix, or I believe that may be an old graphical. We're running it 2 weeks in a row, but the LMP3 machine, I believe that is, around Sebring is the fun race, which obviously is held on Sundays these days, and at 7:30 qualifying. You don't need to be involved with VRRC prior to this. You don't need to be paying for a membership. You don't need to be paying for any kind of championship. Just turn up and race. All you have to do is click one of the links down below to the Discord or the website, and it'll give you all the information you need. Jump into the Discord and someone will show you around. I'm sure probably Rich Hayden or potentially Lewis Edwards. In the time attack, we've got the F2 around Baku, which is a nice rhyme for you. That is running for the next 2 weeks. It started on the 1st of October, and that is, of course, round 3 of the time attack. A 6-round sort of semi-championship time attack style thing. They do change every 2 weeks. So if you want to have a razz around Baku in an F2 car, and there are prizes on offer for that sort of 6-round, I suppose, time attack championship. And then if you just want to chill or have a bit of a drive around the LA Canyons, then the last AC server that VRRC are currently running is the free roam in GT Classic Legends around the LA Canyons, and that's an opportunity just to relax, decompress, maybe enjoy a good victory in either a Fun Cup race or a Mazda MX5 USA Tour race. So I'm sure a couple of the drivers will be jumping on there. For any members of the VRRC, that is a free-to-join server, so that you can take advantage of that anytime you wish if you are part of the VRRC.
Done. As always, yes, lots of racing here on the VRRC for drivers of all experiences, really. That's kind of the point. You don't have to be one of the sim racing pros that we see racing every Wednesday night. You can start your sim racing journey with the VRRC and continue it right the way up to the top. So, yeah, really looking forward to seeing as many of you getting involved with that as possible. Well, fantastic night of racing here at Bridgehampton then. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here on the VRRC. We will all be back. Myself, Andy McEwan, Jack Oliphant, Rich Hayden, Lewis Edwards, everyone else on the VRRC team for the next of our rounds as we move towards the real business end of this AGON by AOC MX5 Cup season. A 40-minute pit stop race at Sebring in a week's time. We'll see you all then.
Woo!